At 3:15 in the morning, while hackers in Romania were attempting to access a bank's customer accounts, I unplugged my headset and stepped away. Not because I was afraid, not because the work was too much. I left because I had just been told I was worth $4,500, while my coworker Jason was worth $32,000 for doing half the work. My name is David Thompson. I'm 47, and until 3 months ago, I spent my nights watching computer screens in Austin, making sure hackers didn't get into bank accounts while most of Texas slept. I didn't quit with drama. I didn't slam my laptop shut, knock over a desk, or give a speech people would repeat later. I left the way you leave a building that's been pressing down on you for 23 years, slowly, carefully, and with a strange sense of relief once the weight was gone. It started with a retention bonus announcement on a Thursday morning, the kind of corporate good news that's really anxiety dressed up in formal language. I worked the overnight cybersecurity shift for Apex Security Solutions, a mid-sized firm providing network monitoring for financial institutions. There was nothing flashy about it. When a threat slipped through at 2:30 a.m., my phone buzzed, and I was the one digging through logs, blocking IP addresses, and stopping someone's retirement savings from vanishing into a server farm overseas. The day shift got recognition. The night shift absorbed the blame. That was the usual arrangement. Our night team was small, 5 of us rotating coverage during the week. 2 were experienced and reliable. 1 was new, straight out of college and still learning. 1 always looked busy, but was never available when things went wrong. And then there was Jason Wilson. Jason was 29, the team lead for the day crew, and he had a talent for making everything sound simple. Always calm, always smiling, like the job was just a checklist. He'd say things like, "Don't worry, Dave. Management knows we're the backbone here." Meanwhile, I was the one who detected the advanced persistent threat that nearly shut down our biggest client's trading platform on Christmas Eve, while he was at a holiday party posting photos online. So when Lisa Roberts, our director of engineering, scheduled an all-hands meeting about retention bonuses for critical personnel, I already knew how it would go. I'd been around long enough to understand how these decisions were made. Compliments are free. Panic is expensive. Lisa used a warm, practiced tone. We're investing in our people. We want to reward commitment and recognize our most critical contributors. Critical contributors. I almost laughed. I'd spent more than 2 decades keeping their systems secure, training new hires, and updating protocols that should have been rewritten years earlier. If critical meant anything, it meant the kind of person whose absence causes serious problems. After the meeting, Lisa called people one by one to share their numbers privately. It was a smart approach. It limited comparisons. Jason got his call first. He returned to our team chat with a rehearsed humility. "Guys, wow, I really didn't expect this. They really came through." Then he sent me a private message with a screenshot, like he'd won something. $32,000, a cash bonus, not stock, not overtime, real money with a 12-month agreement attached. He added, "Told you, Dave, they know who matters here." My stomach tightened. It wasn't jealousy. It was recognition, because I already knew what my number would be. Lisa called me about 20 minutes later. Camera on. Wide, rehearsed smile. "First off, David, thank you. You've been such a stabilizing force on the night shift for so many years." I nodded, because that's what you do in moments like that. "We're offering you a retention bonus, too. We're really excited about this." She paused, as if waiting for a reaction. I thought she might have misspoken or pulled up the wrong spreadsheet. I waited for her to correct herself. She didn't. 4,500, she repeated, still smiling. With the same 12-month agreement as everyone else. I stared at her through the screen and felt heat rise up my neck. Not anger yet, more embarrassment on her behalf. Like she'd clearly stated what she thought I was worth and expected gratitude in return. "Okay," I said, because anything else felt unsafe. Her smile tightened. "This reflects budget considerations, not your performance. You're extremely valued here, valued at roughly the cost of a used pickup truck." When the call ended, I sat in my dark home office, monitors glowing blue, listening to my daughter moving around upstairs. Her tuition alone was $15,000 that semester. I opened my personal spreadsheet, the one tracking everything from mortgage payments to groceries, and typed $4,500 into a cell. Then I typed $32,000 beneath it, not to punish myself, just to see the numbers clearly. A week earlier, Jason had missed a critical security alert because he stepped away to get coffee. I caught it during the handoff, escalated it correctly, and prevented customer data from being exposed during peak trading hours. Lisa sent a team-wide email thanking everyone for maintaining high standards. Now I was being offered pocket money to commit to another year of watching others receive credit for my work. And the worst part was that Jason wasn't even the real problem. He wasn't the cause of the problem. He was simply the most visible sign of something I had been avoiding for far too long. That Monday night, around 11:30 p.m., our monitoring system began sending alerts. At first, they were minor. Then they escalated quickly. A group based in Eastern Europe was testing one of our financial clients' networks, probing for weaknesses in the customer portal. Under normal conditions, we would apply standard blocks and escalate through approved channels, but our response procedures were outdated. The last time I suggested revising them, Lisa told me to focus on execution, not improving processes. My phone buzzed. Jason, as expected. He asked if I was seeing the activity on the client dashboard. I studied the attack patterns forming across my screens and watched the alert queue grow faster than I could clear it. Then I opened the retention agreement Lisa had sent earlier. 12 months minimum commitment, immediate repayment if I left early. A confidentiality clause covering bonus amounts. Another clause confirming at-will employment still applied. They wanted me committed while keeping full freedom to let me go whenever they chose. The attack continued to escalate. 3 separate entry points now, coordinated and subtle. These weren't amateurs. This was professional work, the kind that keeps bank executives awake and puts cybersecurity firms at legal risk. I had seen this pattern before. It always happened during holidays or weekends when the day team was gone, and it was just me, sometimes one other person, handling everything. It always happened when the people who received credit weren't around to manage the fallout. My phone rang again, an unknown number, but the country code was familiar. Romania. I didn't answer. Real professionals don't call to brag. They operate quietly and vanish before anyone reacts. Still, the call told me something important. They knew someone was watching. They knew someone capable was responding, and they were trying to unsettle me. At 1:15 a.m., I had a decision to make. I could follow protocol, escalate to Lisa, wake the incident response team, and spend hours explaining technical details they should already know. Or I could handle it myself, as I had for the past 23 years. The safer option was to follow procedure, protect myself, and let the company face the consequences of thin staffing and weak overnight coverage. Instead, I began documenting everything. Screenshots of attack paths, network traffic logs, precise timestamps showing alerts and responses. This wasn't for the company. It was for me. By 2:15 a.m., the attackers changed direction. They stopped targeting the customer portal and shifted toward internal administrative systems, the systems controlling access to all client networks. That's when it became clear this wasn't random. They had studied us. They knew our overnight coverage was minimal. They knew most of our security staff worked days. They knew exactly when to push. Jason messaged again, saying things were getting serious and asking if we should involve Lisa. I stared at the message. Involve Lisa, the same Lisa who had told me I was worth $4,500. The same Lisa who dismissed process improvements. The same Lisa who was asleep while hackers attempted to access people's life savings. I replied that it was his call. He was the team lead. The typing indicator appeared, vanished, then returned. Finally, he said I should call her, adding that I understood the situation better than anyone. That was the truth everyone knew but rarely said. When things became critical, when real expertise was required, they turned to me, the employee valued at $4,500. At 2:45 a.m., Lisa answered my escalation call, her voice heavy with sleep and irritation. She asked if it was urgent. I watched the attack reach the point where client operations would soon be affected. Service violations, executive calls, legal exposure. I said yes, calmly. She asked how urgent. I looked at my screens, the retention agreement still open in another window, and the clock counting down to when this would become someone else's explanation to very angry, well-funded people. I told her the attackers were inside the admin systems and that root access would give them control over everything. Every client, every account, every transaction. There was silence on her end. Not the thoughtful kind, but the kind that comes from realizing the situation is beyond your depth. She asked what I needed from her. I told her nothing, that I only wanted her aware of the situation. She asked if I could stop it. I could. I had stopped worse with less notice and fewer resources, doing this work quietly for decades while others slept. I said probably. She told me to do whatever was necessary and fix it. At 3:10 a.m., after spending 20 minutes explaining technical details she should have understood but didn't, she said it again. Just do whatever you need to do to fix it, David. At 3:15 a.m., I stood up from my desk, unplugged my headset, and slid my security badge off the lanyard like I was removing something that had never fully belonged to me. Then I walked away. I didn't panic afterward. I didn't spend the night staring at the ceiling or trying to explain decisions that had never really added up. Things don't stop simply because you decide not to keep fighting them. The hackers in Romania didn't shut down their operation because David Thompson chose to stop being undervalued. Those systems kept running, defended by people who didn't truly understand how they worked. I learned much later that it took them 3 hours to contain what I could have resolved in 30 minutes. 3 hours of customer data exposed, 3 hours of SLA breaches stacking up, 3 hours of Lisa and Paul Anderson, our VP of Operations, scrambling to understand why night coverage had suddenly disappeared. By 6 a.m., they had contained the immediate threat, but the damage went beyond the systems themselves and into the company's credibility. Incidents ripple outward. Clients start asking difficult questions. Insurance providers adjust premiums. By noon the next day, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Slack messages came first, then texts, then repeated missed calls from Lisa, none with voicemails. Confident managers leave detailed messages. Nervous ones just keep dialing. I checked my work email once, out of curiosity. Overnight tickets were stacked up everywhere. A European client had escalated to their VP of Operations. Another client was threatening contract penalties. Buried in the inbox was a calendar invite titled Emergency Coverage Discussion, with no agenda attached. This wasn't sudden. It wasn't one bad shift or a single misunderstanding. It was a pattern I had been working around for 23 years, convincing myself it was temporary, that this was just how night shifts worked in corporate America. I started gathering documentation, not angrily but carefully. Performance reviews, incident reports, certifications I'd paid for and maintained on my own time. Every major threat I'd shut down in the past year had timestamps between midnight and 6 a.m. The bonus structure told its own story. The money came from a discretionary budget Lisa controlled. The amounts weren't tied to metrics or seniority. They were tied to perception, who made executives feel safe during business hours. Jason made them feel safe. I made problems disappear in the dark, where no one had to think about them. The most revealing part was buried on page 3 of the retention agreement, a clause about performance expectations during the commitment period. If you signed, you agreed to the same workload and responsibilities for 12 months, regardless of staffing changes, scope creep, or incident volume. They weren't just buying loyalty, they were buying availability. For Jason, that meant 12 months of day shifts, predictable hours, and manageable stress. For me, it meant 12 more months of standing alone between skilled attackers and other people's money, every night, for the price of a decent used car. By Wednesday afternoon, Paul Anderson called me directly. In 23 years, I'd spoken to him exactly 3 times, and each time something was already on fire. David, he said, skipping small talk, we're seeing cascading issues from Monday night. Lisa says you have the most context on our response protocols. Context, not authority, not ownership. Context. I do, I said. Can you join a call and help us sort this out? I thought about the unsigned retention agreement in my inbox, the repayment clause, Jason's screenshot, and that $27,500 gap. I can, I said slowly, but I won't. Silence followed, long enough to say everything. Why not? Paul asked. Because that's what the retention bonus was for. You already decided who was worth keeping. He sighed, irritated but controlled. David, this isn't the time for that conversation. It's exactly the time, Paul. You wanted to keep me for $4,500. This is what staying looks like. We'll deal with this tomorrow, he said, and ended the call. After that, things moved quickly. By Thursday morning, the client status page shifted from green to yellow to orange. Someone posted an update mentioning internal resource constraints. Clients don't like hearing that the people protecting their money aren't available. By Friday, Jason called me directly. Not a text, a real call. Dave, he said with keyboard noise in the background, I know you're upset about the bonus, but we really need your help. Lisa's on us, and honestly, I'm over my head with some of this advanced work. There it was. Not an apology, not recognition of the imbalance, just need. You got the bonus, Jason, I said. This is what it's for. He went quiet for a moment. Come on, man. That's not fair. I almost smiled. You're right. It isn't fair, and it simply isn't my problem anymore. Look, I know I don't understand the systems the way you do. A lot of the documentation you wrote is outdated, and good luck figuring it out, I said and ended the call. By the next Monday, the company status page had turned red. That's when leadership truly began to panic. Not because of immediate losses, but because of visibility. Red status pages make clients uneasy. Uneasy clients call executives. Executives don't like being called at home. The irony was that the systems themselves weren't broken. They were just unprotected, like a house with the locks removed, but the doors still standing. Everything looked fine until someone tested it. Tuesday morning, Lisa emailed me directly. No CCs, no corporate language. David, we need to talk. What will it take? I read it twice, then replied with 3 sentences. I'm open to discussing compensation aligned with industry standards, a clear advancement path, and a transition to day shift coverage. Until then, I'm not available for emergency support. This isn't punitive, it's professional. Within an hour, HR was added to the thread. By the afternoon, legal was included. They weren't there for me. They were there because someone had finally asked the obvious question. How does one person stepping away collapse an entire night operation? That question doesn't lead to promotions. It leads to audits. By Thursday, the internal narrative shifted. People stopped asking me to return and started asking who approved what, when, and why. Someone noticed that night shift performance reviews were capped at meets expectations regardless of results. Someone else realized retention bonuses weren't tied to any objective criteria. Another person noticed Jason signed his agreement just hours before an incident he couldn't manage alone. Paul scheduled a process improvement review. Lisa stopped replying to emails entirely. That's when it became clear. They thought I was gone. But I wasn't gone. The consequences of how I'd been treated were simply arriving, one audit trail at a time. The audit didn't arrive with alarms or drama. It came as calendar blocks titled Review and Follow-Up, booked by people who never joined night calls and never asked how outages were resolved. They didn't need explanations. They had timelines, logs, emails, and signed agreements showing different numbers for the same role. Lisa was the first to disappear. Officially, she was pursuing other opportunities. Unofficially, her name just vanished from company directories. When someone spends 8 years at a company and leaves without a farewell email, the decision clearly wasn't mutual. Jason lasted longer. He tried to fill the gap, posting updates, volunteering for calls, speaking louder in meetings, but visibility cuts both ways. When people began asking detailed questions about security protocols and incident response, his answers thinned quickly. He wasn't incompetent, he just didn't know the systems as well as he believed. And now everyone could see it. 3 weeks after I walked out, a recruiter I'd spoken to years earlier reached out. It was a day shift role at a larger tech company in Austin. Same technical scope, real career progression, and a team that actually understood cybersecurity work. The interview felt different from any I'd had in years. They didn't ask me to justify my experience or prove my value. They'd already done the research. They knew about the incident at Apex, knew about the retention program, and understood that companies sometimes make costly mistakes about who they choose to keep. We're not looking for someone to clean up problems in the dark, the hiring manager said. We want someone who builds systems that prevent problems in the first place. The offer included an $18,000 base increase over my previous salary, better health benefits, and no retention agreement. They wanted me for what I could do, not because they feared I'd leave. I accepted the same day. Apex HR emailed me midweek, carefully worded and without apology. They wanted to close the loop on my employment status. I replied with a concise resignation letter. 2 paragraphs, no accusations, just facts. Last day worked. Reason for leaving: misalignment between role scope and compensation. Legal approved it within an hour. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't trying to keep me, they were limiting liability. I handed over access the way I always had: documented, complete, professional. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't delete files. I didn't need to. The damage had already been done by people who believed expertise was replaceable and loyalty was inexpensive. Jason completed the full 12 months, but he never received another bonus. That was the real outcome. Not dramatic or cinematic, just a 29-year-old watching his career stall while realizing how much he still didn't know. He left 6 months after the retention period ended. Last I heard, he was doing desktop support in Dallas. As for me, the first time my phone rang at 2 a.m. at the new job, it was a wrong number. I silenced it and went back to sleep without thinking about threat levels, client SLAs, or whether I'd be blamed if something wasn't fixed by morning. Walking out at 3:15 a.m. wasn't the dramatic part. The real shift was realizing I didn't need to prove my value by staying exhausted. They paid to retain the wrong person, and I stopped pretending that fixing it was my responsibility. My daughter starts her sophomore year in the fall. Pre-med, just as planned. For the first time in years, I'm not worried about how we'll pay for it. The new job's tuition assistance covers half, and the salary increase covers the rest with room to spare. But the real win isn't financial. It's simpler. I sleep through the night now. When my phone buzzes at 2 a.m., it's usually just a message from my daughter studying late, asking if I'm proud of her. I always reply the same way: more than you know. For 23 years, I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed loyal enough, and solved enough problems others couldn't, I'd eventually be valued the way I deserved. It took a $27,500 retention bonus gap to teach me something every 47-year-old should already understand. Your worth isn't measured by how much strain you're willing to absorb. Sometimes the most effective response is simply refusing to be undervalued. Everything else follows.